And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part as well by Yahoo Sports. Check out their DFS offerings. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Monday morning. You're going to have to wait a while for some MLB DFS action on this Monday. The lock time is what, about 9:40?
9:40 Eastern time.
This is, I was talking to Dave before, and Dave, Lofty_D. This is one of the stranger slates I think I've ever seen. I don't know that I've seen, and typically this would be on Super Bowl Sunday where you see a strange slate because in the NBA because they know they're not going to go up against the Super Bowl ratings.
They do it during the NCAA championship too.
Is that the same thing? Am I missing something? What's happening on June the 3rd, 2019? Is there?
No, honestly, I was wondering the same thing. I was trying to see if there was anything going on. Maybe there is. I mean, Mondays, it's when it's basketball season, those championship games are on Monday nights, and right. Monday usually has a pretty decent sized slate. Baseball, Mondays and Thursdays are the only days where teams take off generally, right? So like every other day, usually a 15 games spread out. Once in a while it'll be like 14, but you get it. It's usually always 15 games. Mondays you get breaks, but you're usually talking like 7 games, 10 games, 8 right. games, not 3 games, and certainly not 3 games starting this late. I mean, it's funny because the Phillies are the only East Coast team playing on the West Coast. So it's not even like you have a bunch of East Coast teams playing on the West Coast. No, it's just 6 teams in action, 9:40 lock. Still monster payouts, monster prize pools. I'm certainly still going to be playing, but it's weird and it kind of sucks that we have to wait this long.
Yeah, it's going to be one to sit around and twiddle your thumbs for a lot of the day when it comes to winning on lineups. We've been getting lineups pretty steadily throughout the day, but this will be one, again, for you East Coasters. East Coast bias from me here, but you're going to have to wait around a little bit later to get your lineups in. We will talk through this 3-game slate. We'll go game by game simply because easier to do that on this shortest slate. We'll start with the aforementioned, well, let's go Dodgers, Arizona first. Philadelphia is a 10-10. Dodgers, Arizona is a 9:40 start. That gives us a matchup of Robbie Ray and Walker Buehler, 9,200, 8,900 respectively on DK. Price points, I'm surprised they didn't price anyone over 10K, just the way we've seen on DraftKings so far this year. Surprised that we didn't get either Nola or Ray at 10-2 or 10-5 just to force the issue. But we have a matchup here between the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks of Ray and Buehler in Arizona. Haven't checked yet if the dome should be open or not, but that's something to always keep in mind when it comes to the heat out there in Arizona when you try to figure out the offense. But these are 2 good pitchers. We know Ray has struggles with walks. I know Buehler has struggled a little bit with the 4-seamer this year. But this is a game that should see 2 of the better pitching options, if not the 2 best pitching options on the slate. You throw Aaron Nola into the mix as well. Where do you see your allegiances lying here? Does it go to the pitching side of the ledger, or there's some bats in this one that first and foremost stand out as potential plays in this Dodgers-Diamondbacks game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Dodgers team that you're not going to get a ton of strikeouts from. Nick Pivetta had a great game, 6 innings, 3 hits, only 82 pitches, 9 strikeouts. Gabe Kepler thought it was wise to pinch hit for him with 82 pitches. Now, often you could make that argument that it was a good decision. Here's why I don't think it was. Your pinch hitter was Phil Gosselin.
Right.
And your bullpen's been garbage, right? Like, your bullpen's been terrible. That's why Max Scherzer comes into the 8th. I had this discussion with my producer from Sirius. It's during a commercial break, and he asks Manny Laura and myself, like, dude, Scherzer's coming back out with 104 pitches. Like, why is that up? What's up with that? Dude, have you seen their bullpen? I mean, he's arguably the best pitcher in the league. He's got 104 pitches. He's got, 12 strikeouts. He comes back out, strikes out the side. He gave up a leadoff double, still struck out 15 batters. Like, if I'm you, if I'm if I'm the Nationals manager, yeah, and they tried to pull him. Scherzer said, "No, I'm staying." You're letting him stay out there, right? Like you're no question because 104 pitches from Scherzer and counting is better than anything you're getting from that bullpen. Well, with the way Pivetta was pitching, you bring Velasquez out there, gives up a homer, and by the time you know it, going into the bottom of the seventh, Dan, it was a 0-0 game. After the eighth, it was 8-0.
Yep.
So I'm going on a tangent. It's pointless, but I thought it was ridiculous. Like I get you want to pinch hit, but when your best option's Phil Gosselin, it's basically an automatic out anyway. Seriously, how much better of how much better of a chance do you have, just hypothetically speaking, than Nick Pivetta at this rate? Like Gosselin's terrible, and Pivetta was cruising with 82 pitches, could have easily gone one more. Whatever. Nevertheless, or I should say, I digress. Robbie Ray, this gets me all to Robbie Ray. This is a good Dodgers team, but I do think it's interesting because I'd rather be a lefty against them than a righty. Yes, some of these guys can hit lefties, but they're still much better with the platoon advantage, whether it be Jock Peterson, Bellinger, Max Muncy, right? Like Corey Seager, all of those guys definitely prefer them when they're facing righties. Robbie Ray gets a ton of strikeouts. And again, while it isn't the greatest strikeout matchup, when someone's pitching well, like Pivetta, 9 Ks in 6 innings, it doesn't have to be the best K matchup. It just has to not be the Angels or like the Astros, because those guys just, no matter what, very, very seldom are you getting strikeouts from those. But the Dodgers this season, very good team. I'm not sold on them when it comes to versus lefties that you can't have a good pitching performance against them. I think you can. And look, 21.1% K rate. It's right around the middle of the league. But then you look at their WOBA, you look at their ISO, they're good marks. Like, take nothing away from them. But Robbie Ray can mitigate damage by striking guys out. So the Dodgers have a middle of the road ISO against them. He might give up a couple home runs, but he could also strike out 10 batters. He also has a very tough time getting deep into games. He's gone 6 innings twice in 12 starts this year. To be fair, 2 of them were in Coors. He's had some tough spots. But really, it comes down to this. It's a roundabout way of me saying $9,200 for a guy in Robbie Ray who strikes out 30% of batters on a 3-game slate, to me, is worth it. And you're also getting a Dodgers team that is probably going to be without Justin Turner again. That would help. And AJ Pollock is still out. It's a good team, but I think you're going to have quite a bit of lefties in there, Dan. And I'd give the slight edge to Robbie Ray, even if he gives up a couple runs.
I will project. This isn't a projection. It's not a computer doing this. I will guess. That's my personal way of looking at this, that Robbie Ray will have at least 4 walks in this game. And this will be a game where Robbie Ray gets felled by 10,000 paper cuts. It feels like a game where Ray is fine, has 6 to 8 strikeouts, but also 4 or 5 walks. I like the Dodgers as bats here. Again, it's 3 games, so you're going to have to get crazy and probably have your pitcher against one of your bats, if not 2 of your bats, depending on how you're stacking. Ray's upside for strikeouts is there, but the walk rate on the year is at 12.8%, the highest of the slate. Again, just 3 games, but you do have the Dodgers pretty steadily at 10% or higher when it comes to walk rate against lefties on the season. So I'll take that. I'll agree with you, though. Small slate, you have Ray with the strikeout upside, so you're going to have to at least consider him. Any other pieces from this one?
Well, here's the thing, though. Dude, Aaron Nola is going to be 80% owned.
Right, and exactly right. Yep.
Like, that's really what it comes down to for me. I of course, I like Aaron Nola. We'll get there. He's facing a righty-heavy Padre. Of course, I like Aaron Nola. But let's not act like he's infallible, number one. And I'm not going to pretend that Robbie Ray doesn't have really good strikeout stuff. So Adam and I discussed this on the Deeper Dive the other day. Like, when I'm looking for upside, especially with lower owned guys, and he'll have ownership. It's a 3-game slate, but I don't think it'll be close to Nola. I really don't. You are looking for strikeout upside. And Robbie Ray has that and more. He's striking lefties and righties out, both of them, at 30% this year. He hasn't given a home run up to a lefty in 60 batters faced. He's done a much better job of preventing home runs overall. Like you said, the walks are an issue, but he's the best hitters on this team are lefties. He's walking lefties at only 5%. He's got a 2.8 xFIP against them. So I think people will see the Dodgers and they'll say, no, thank you, I'm good. But it's just he is a good enough pitcher with a high enough ceiling at 9,200 for me to say, what are the odds that he can beat out Aaron Nola here? And while, Aaron Nola's probability of hitting, say, 30 fantasy points is going to be higher than Ray's, his ownership is going to be also way higher, in my opinion, than Ray. And I think probably Buehler will be up there too. So that's why I have interest.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
And look, I'm fine with Walker Buehler, but once again, let's come back to the same discussion. Strikeouts are king, because when you give up runs and you can't mitigate that with strikeouts, you're going to get yourself into trouble. Some pitchers are very, very good, but when they have an off game and they're not missing bats, you're not getting the numbers that you need. Walker Buehler, he's obviously one of the top 3 options in play here. But he's got, look, a 22% K rate against lefties, 25% against righties. Perfectly fine numbers, but unspectacular. And it's also a Diamondbacks team that, for all intents and purposes, has been pretty impressive, even with some of the injuries they've had. Also, keep in mind, I'm just throwing all of this out there because it's a 3-game slate, that David Peralta will likely be activated for this game. So there's another really good lefty that you're going to be dealing with here. So on the season against righties, you've got a Diamondbacks team that is striking out at the 19th highest clip, same rate that the Dodgers are striking out against lefties, actually right. 18th. The Diamondbacks are, but the thing is, the Diamondbacks haven't produced as much in terms of WOBA, WRC plus, but power they have plenty. So it's really a preference thing. I'll take the upside with a guy like Robbie Ray over Buehler, but I understand both. And as far as hitting goes, like you said, I don't hate the idea of a Dodger stack, but I will mention that, Bellinger is still 5,800. Jock Peterson's 5,600. Some of the Max Muncy's 4,900. If you're getting to the best hitters in this lineup, you will be paying for them. And then what you'll see, I'm assuming you're going to see a decent amount of ownership for Kike Hernandez because he's super cheap. David Freese, if he's leading off, will probably be relatively popular. Chris Taylor, again, very cheap, batting 5th or 6th. He'll probably be chalky against Ray, which would actually make me more interested in Ray for the same reasons.
Yeah, you might see, I saw, what was in the lineup middle of the week, Taylor leading off, Freeze cleanup, and Kiki 5 or 6. So you're going to see those right-handed bats in those top 6 spots. And I think that makes a great point about ownership here on these short slates. To his credit, EMAC made the point on the Saturday show. I co-hosted with him over on our YouTube channel. And if you're watching there, like this video, share it, subscribe, all those things. About these shorter slates of really considering ownership, really making, and I think he credited Alex and Tom and the likes. And
as they should be credited. Alex is amazing at that.
Yeah, and so he talked about the turbo slates mainly on DK, but the idea of not to necessarily just own people because they are low owned. Like that's a fallacy and that's a bad way to go about it. But to understand where the upside is in getting away from ownership and looking at these probable outcomes and the possibility of some upside for certain situations. And I think that comes into play on a 3-game slate. And I think you make a great point there around that.
Well, there's a difference. It's funny because Manny and I had the same strategy discussion on Awesemo Radio. On Sirius XM, by the way, Sirius 210 XM 87, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday and Sunday every weekend. But just kind of feeding off what you were saying, there's a difference between being contrarian, getting leverage, and being stupid. Like the idea of needing everybody in your lineup being less than like 5%, unnecessary. Because the truth is, the chalk plays are still have the highest probability of panning out in terms of projections, right? In terms of matchup, all of that. But it's baseball. And a lot of times another guy that is either similarly priced or cheaper that might not have as good of a matchup is going to see the same amount of plate appearances, right? And There's a good chance that the starting pitcher could get yanked early, or just so many ways that a chalk play can go wrong, especially from a hitting standpoint, and so many ways that a contrarian lower-owned play could go right. And I think on a 3-game slate like this, where you have a guy like Ray, Walker, and Nola, all of whom are good pitchers, but all of whom have some flaws, whether it's matchup, lack of upside. In terms of Nola, just, swinging strike stuff, but he's still very good, and he has more called strikeouts than anyone in the league this season. But overall, I do think playing the ownership game makes a lot of sense here if it's spread out enough. It might not be. I might be wrong. But, my guess is that Nola's just at 9,600 is going to be ridiculously high, as he should be. And I'll obviously have a lot of him, but I'll also make a concerted effort to get Robbie Ray as well.
Let's talk about that game next. It's minus 125 in favor of the Philadelphia Phillies, 7.5 according to these early numbers I'm seeing. Aaron Nola, who sits at 6-0 with a 4.18 ERA against Eric Lauer, 4-4, 4.45 ERA on the day. Well, on the season, not on the day. On the season for Lauer, you made mention of Nola being a most likely chalk play, and to your point, well over 50%, probably nearing 60, 75%, if not 80% in a lot of places, simply because of these numbers that the San Diego Padres put up and because of the park factor, which many people will try to point to. But this is a San Diego Padres team against right-handed pitchers who strikes out, was it about 27, 28% of the time on the year, WRC plus below 100, ISO around 160. There's tons to like about Nola, but on a 3-game slate, we'll talk about getting away from him. But Nola's the quote-unquote cash game option right here. Like, I don't know many people.
He's the top option.
Like, don't play cash on a 3-game slate, but that's me. I get why you do it, but it seems like a bad slate to do it on. But he's going to be popular, and it makes total sense why.
It absolutely does. 33 called strikeouts this season, leads the entire league. And it's not a surprise. I mean, he does a great job of painting the corners. He does a great job of buckling knees with that looping curve that he just drop in there for strikes. Because the truth is, he doesn't miss a ton of bats, right? Like, he doesn't throw a high 90s fastball. He doesn't miss a ton of bats, but he just does a great job of controlling his pitches commanding his pitches. And it results in some really good numbers. I mean, that last start against St. Louis was excellent. The one against the Cubs, I give him a pass. Wrigley Field, wind was blowing out 16 miles per hour. And then he won against Milwaukee. He struggled. He was way off, and the Brewers just got to him early. But career high 12 strikeouts against the Rockies 3 starts ago. We've seen him look a whole lot better recently. Like you said, would you say 6-0 or something over his last whatever? Win actually 6-0 in the season, which is funny because he's had some really ugly starts. But really, if you were to just look at recent outings outside of the Cubs game and that Brewers game, he's allowed 1 or fewer runs in 5 of his last 7, and 1 was at Wrigley with wind blowing out. He is very good. He is the best overall pitching option on the slate. He will easily be the highest projected pitcher on this slate, and you should have Aaron Nola. But that doesn't mean that we should be ignoring a lot of some of the other options on here just because Nola's the best play, and that's what it comes down to, because it is still baseball and things can still happen to work against him. While I think it's low probability, or the likelihood is a lot less or smaller that it will, it doesn't mean that it can't. So that's what it is. And also, Nola does give up some pop, does give up some home runs. So if you're playing 150 lineups, the idea of getting a few San Diego stacks in there obviously makes sense on a night where there's only 6 teams going. To me, it definitely makes sense, because if there's one thing this Padres team has, it's not hitting for average, but it is hitting for power.
Yep, makes total sense there with some upside. You do have on the other side Eric Lauer, who's had his upside at times, but doesn't have a huge K per 9, doesn't have huge K percentage, 19.7%, does not walk a ton, 5.6%, 14.1 K minus walk ratio. this Philadelphia Phillies lineup we've targeted in the past. Is Lauer and this San Diego Padres offense in the plans at all, or do you see it all on the Philadelphia side of the ledger?
Dude, there's no way that Philly bats aren't really popular, but you want to talk about some dynamic pricing? Dude, this is extreme. You take Rhys Hoskins, for example. He was 4,200, 4,200, 4,400. Now he's 5,500, right? There's 3 games against the Dodgers. Really inexpensive. Bryce Harper was 41, 43, 43. He's 52. Andrew McCutchen, 43, 42, 45. He's 54. I could run it across the board with these guys. All of them are very expensive. All of them have seen huge price hikes. I mean, my guess is even out of the 8 hole at 3,600, so he's cheap. Maikel Franco will be very popular for that reason. Cesar Hernandez probably batting 6th or 7th will be popular. Even Kingery will have some ownership. JT Realmuto is 4,400. That seems reasonable given he hasn't seen a huge price hike since that Dodgers game.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a great park. The difference, though, is that the Phillies are super righty heavy, and they should have a high total here. They're coming off a 3-game sweep at the hand of the Dodgers, and they, just being clear, because I watched every game from start to finish, they gave 2 of those games away, and Gabe Kapler is a bad manager. I don't care what anybody says. Their bullpen is also bad. But that's just a brutal combination. Lauer hasn't been terrible. Do I think you could play him? The truth is, you could play anyone on this slate. Probably not playing like Wade LeBlanc, but even Houston's super shorthanded. So anyone is viable here with only 6 pitchers. And while I don't love him and I like the Phillies more, it'd be stupid to say that like you couldn't win a tournament with Eric Lauer in your lineup. Here's the biggest difference, though, and what makes it less appealing. Nola, like you said, you would think that they would have been priced up on a site like this. You'd think Nola would be like $11K, honestly, and Ray maybe 10.5, Bueller 9,900. They're not. And Eric Lauer is less than 2,000 less than Robbie Ray. He's 1,600 less than Bueller. So that's tough. If Eric Lauer was 5,900, 6,200, I think you'd probably see a decent amount of ownership coming his way because it allows you to get some really pricey bats. And it looks like we're going to have 10 active hitters at 4,900 or higher on this slate, and there's only 6 teams going.
Yep. No, I think that's exactly right. I will point over on FanDuel. You have Robbie Ray at 8K and Eric Lauer is 7,400. So,
I mean, yeah, it's not even a question.
No, it's pretty straightforward there. I mean, Wade LeBlanc is 6,200 if you want to go that route. I don't, but if you are interested in such things, that is open to you. Let's close out talking about the Astros and the Mariners. And you make, honestly, a point I've made over the past 5 days that I get why people want to target and talk about Bregman and talk about the other pieces here for the Houston Astros as Correa, Springer, and Altuve are all out. But I will continue to at least look at the pitching side of this and look at who's going against this Astros lineup as they continue to have all of these injuries. I get Brantley's there and I get Bregman's fine, but I will look at him. I have no interest in LeBlanc, even on a 3-game. So I have zero interest in even considering him in this matchup.
Their active K rate against righties. I know he's a lefty, but I'm just kind of throwing against righties this year. Their active roster with all the guys still on the DL is still the lowest in the league. So,
right.
It's tough. I think you get like, would I be shocked if LeBlanc went out there and pitched like 6 1-run innings? I honestly wouldn't, because this lineup's not very good at all that they're running out. Who do they get?
Tony Kemp, baby. Tony Kemp for life.
Right. Tony Kemp, Fisher, Miles Straw. Who else? Marisnik's fine, but like he's clearly, these guys are not good replacements. Jake Mayfield, Dan. No Altuve, no Springer, no Correa, and even Ledmys Diaz. That is a huge hole in the lineup.
Let me ask you this. When was the last time you had a rib cracked getting a massage?
Oh, I would say like 3 months ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Carlos Correa. And like I made the point of maybe it was an existing injury and it just was brought out by the massage. Maybe, and then I read an article of like, no, it was very specifically he felt the crack while the massage
Was
was
it a
happening.
team masseuse?
No, private masseuse.
So like,
I don't know if Robert Kraft suggested the masseuse or
past
not.
the All-Star break.
Yeah.
Do you sue him? Do you sue him?
If I'm the Astros, I sure do.
Yeah, not Correa personally, but well, that's the thing though. It's a private.
It had to have been sanctioned in some way. Like,
right. I'm not big on the whole lawsuit deal unless it's, but
that's some severe cash they might be
when
missing out on.
Right. When you're talking about a player like this that it is integral to this team's success, and you're giving him a massage to make him, loose and better, but in turn you sideline him for 2 months. Holy shit, man.
Yeah, you crack a rib. You cracked a rib. To point out, Dave was talking about K rate for active roster against lefties for the Astros is at 19.5%. Again, active roster, guys who are currently active for this team, not including Springer, Correa, and Altuve. And then you have 11.9% walk percentage. So Wade LeBlanc, even though you would look at the roster and say, looks like a good spot, he's not a pitcher I even want to screw around with on a 3-game slate. Bats, I assume, are in order here between Martin and LeBlanc, both for Seattle and Houston. Would you guess this is where we see the highest ownership from a stack percentage?
It's very possible, yeah, especially because you're going to get some discounts. What's funny though is like if you look at K rates versus lefties, some of these active players since the start of last season. Mayfield, he's only seen 8 plate appearances, tough, 38%. Marisnik, 34% K rate. Tyler White, 31%. Chirino's 28. Derek Fisher, 27. So that's kind of the funny part here, right? Is there are strikeouts. The active roster is going to lower it because I would assume you're just taking the amount of plate appearances, not, you're taking the total amount of plate. So like, I think that would make sense. I'm not sure. You would think it would skew it when you take like a lot of plate appearances for Bregman and Brantley and Reddick this year and Gurriel. It might cancel out the fewer plate appearances for guys like Mayfield and Straw and Fisher and such. But I don't know. What I do know is that the cheaper price points will probably be alluring. And while Bregman isn't going to come at a huge discount, 4,900 on this slate actually feels kind of cheap. There are a few guys too that like Tyler White. He's been awful this year. I mean, awful. But for his career, he has hammered lefties. You would think that turns around at some point. Derek Fisher, if he leads off, he shouldn't against lefty, but Miles Straw might. He's got the platoon advantage, and he's looked like, what did he have? One horrible game. No, yeah, 1 0 for 4 game. And then was it Sunday? He went 3 for 4 with 3 runs and 3 singles and 3 stolen bases, Dan, which was pretty interesting. What I do know is that if he's leading off at 3,500, he will be chalky, and rightfully so. I don't have an issue with it, but we'll have to see here. And do we have a probable opener?
All I've seen is no. I have not seen anything specifically on that. No.
Okay. Yeah, LeBlanc's been bad though, and Houston has been really underwhelming too with these injuries. But I agree with you that they'll be popular, and especially people will probably look to go Nola Buehler or Nola Ray, and those Houston bats some of the cheaper Houston bats will make that a lot easier.
Yeah, and it will be, again, over at Awesemo.com, we do have ownership projections as you're trying to figure out a day like this and making mention of what Emac said that Alex said, to credit that correctly. These short slates are really where you can differentiate on ownership. And the ownership projections over at Awesemo for the shorter slates can be pretty spot on. The big slates can be a little bit, more dynamic and moving parts as you go through. But as you get into these turbo and late slates, you really get a dynamic effect over on Osmo.com that can really change the way you construct lineups and go about how exactly you are entering tournaments and cash games alike. So check that out. You can become a member by using the promo code EARLYBIRD. That's one word, gets you 50% off your first month, and then you go on from there. As always, you can check out our Twitter handle, Osmo_com. Throughout the NBA Finals, our social team is doing a great job of giving away free subscriptions just by guessing totals on full games and on individual teams.
Annual ones, too.
Yeah, so there's a ton going on over there. You will want to check that out. So follow Osmo_com, follow Osmo NBA as well on Twitter, and you will get all the updates on how to enter for those contests. And as always, find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find myself at Dan Strafford. You will get a deep dive. It'll be a shortened deep dive. And then you get the deeper dive, as always, with Adam and Lofty. Adam, I still think, is at his parental home.
Yeah, he's June. Actually, no.
He moved in, but I don't know that he has everything set up yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
by the way, I'm not sure where you were going with this, but we didn't hit on Mariner bats.
Oh, well, I mean, feel free.
Well,
feel free to go there.
Only because Corbin Martin had that one really impressive start. I'm curious to know where you're at on him too, because he had one really impressive start, right? Against Texas, good team against righties, a lot of left-handed pop, 9 Ks, 5 1/3, 2 runs, 28 fantasy points. And then against Boston, fine, we'll give him a pass, 4 walks, 0 strikeouts in 4 innings, Dan. And then that's 4 innings again. Then the White Sox, okay, bounce back spot, 3 earned, 3 1/3 innings, 3 Ks, nothing great at all. Then the Cubs, 3 2/3 innings, 3 runs, 3 home runs, 3 walks, and 4 Ks. So his pitch counts have been limited, but Corbin Martin has now allowed 6 home runs in 16 innings. He has not looked very good. He might be striking out a batter per inning, but he's walking a lot. He's giving up a lot of power. And another thing that I find pretty interesting, that swinging strike rate has been 8.8%. So that first start may have been a bit of an illusion here. 492 woba to righties, 332 to lefties. Granted, small sample. But then what about this? When you look at these batted ball numbers, he's not giving up a ton of fly balls. He's just giving up a lot of hard contact. And when the balls do go in the air against righties, they're leaving the park. So I get the feeling, and again, playing the ownership game here, that the Seattle bats could go very much overlooked. And if that's the case, I would have interest in that. And it's really just because you only have 6 teams, and you look at some of these prices, Haniger, Santana, Malik Smith with speed, they're all very, very cheap. Even Encarnacion's $4,400, Dan Vogelbach's $43. Yes, you're talking about a bullpen for Houston that is good, and if they come in, it could suck. But Corbin Martin, and again, I want to get your take here before we close it. Corbin Martin has not looked sharp whatsoever, and like you're targeting strikeouts for pitching, you're also looking for the long ball when it comes to hitting against opposing pitchers. So I think it's in play here. Everything's in play, but Mariner bats definitely have some appeal.
I would be right there with you. Corbin Martin is not one of the top 3 prospects for the Astros. It was Whitley, Tucker, and Alvarez. Kyle Tucker, I'm surprised, has not become more of a big thing for the Astros.
With all these injuries, right?
Yeah, and Corbin Martin is somebody who in the minor leagues has had a pretty much 1-to-1 ratio strikeout to inning pitch. You were just mentioning that when it comes to his major league numbers. What's intriguing from his major league numbers comparatively to his minor league numbers is the walks have risen greatly. And so you credit that to better hitters and more astute hitters at the major league level. I think Corbin Martin's the kind of guy that will be a very solid starter for years to come.
And he's faced some tough teams.
But I don't think he's going to be great this year. I think he's going to be one of those pitchers we watch, which happens a lot, that struggles to make the transition into Major League Baseball. So when it comes to the Dan Vogelbachs of the world, I'm all about him on this slate. I think that if we see ownership down, Martin's going to give up some power. He's going to give up contact, and he's going to walk batters. And so that's sort of the formula for 3 or 4 runs. And on this slate, that's what you're going to look for. That's going to what you're going to need. And I think Vogelbach and the other power hitters here, even you made mention of Haniger, give me the 1, 2, 3 of Seattle, which I assume Vogelbach will be 2 or 3 there. And I think there's definite upside. So I like Corbin Martin long term. Your dynasty league or your whatever, like, great. I have no doubt. Daily fantasy, I think this is a spot where Martin could be the least efficient pitcher on this slate, and thus probably somebody you should target against.
So have a little fun here. What do you think? And by the way, if you did want to, the all day slate, I can't imagine the prize pools are going to be huge, but given that you're going to have 5 games.
4. You get the Cubs.
It's only 4. Yeah, it's that
Cubs
extra
and Angels
Cubs game. Because you have the late swap, it's not a terrible idea. One game can make a bit of difference. Let's have a little bit of fun here. I'm going to ask you to guess the implied totals for these teams. All right.
Sure. Okay.
I'm going to go around. Phillies.
The Phillies implied total against Lauer is 4.4.
Okay, it's 4 even. Not a lot of respect going to those Phillies bats, let me tell you. 4 even. And by the way, I would have had it right where you had it, around 4.4, 4.5. Arizona.
Against Buehler at home, though. This is in Arizona. I will say 4.2.
3.9, close.
Okay.
And yeah, I probably would have had around 4.1. Usually I'm pretty good with these. How about Seattle against Corbin Martin?
4.7.
4.6. Very nice.
All right.
Dodgers against Robbie Ray.
So what do we have the Diamondbacks at? What were they at? 3.9?
Diamondbacks at 3.9. Padres at 4. Or you just want the same game? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll say this 3. I'll say 4 even.
4.7.
Really?
4.7 for the Dodgers against Robbie Ray.
And what's the total on that game?
Total's 8.5. Dodgers are 149 money line favorites. So, and the reason I'm doing this is, number one, I want to see how close you are. You've been pretty close. But number two, totals sway ownership.
Yeah.
And
Vegas. We've seen it many times over. Yeah,
for absolutely. Sure. All right, a couple more for you. What do you have San Diego at against Philly? And again, the Phillies are at 4.
The Phillies are 4, and it's Nola who's going to be chalk. I will say 3.4.
3.6.
Okay.
It makes a bit of sense. But yeah, seeing 3.6 to 4 runs is pretty crazy. And then the only other one we have on the board, we don't have one for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. Oh yeah, we do. We got them all. Sorry. What do you got for Houston against Wade LeBlanc?
I'm gonna say it's 4.7.
You were gonna say 4.9, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah, 5.1. 5.1. So you would have been right in the middle.
Man, that's amazing.
Your highest total here is Houston against LeBlanc 5.1, Dodgers against Ray 4.7, Seattle against Corbin Martin is the third highest at 4.6. Then you got Philly at 4, Arizona at 3.9 against Buehler, and San Diego at 3.6 against Aaron Nola.
You went through the Philly prices. If they're going to be lower on the Vegas total and thus lower ownership,
I think you're right. Yeah. I think you're right. That's why it's kind of fun. We should do that on the smaller slates when we have more time. Go over the totals at the end.
Yep.
See how it matches up to what we think ownership will look like. I agree. A 4-run even implied total could definitely suppress that a bit. And we could see that Mariners ownership a lot higher than I thought at 4.6.
Yep. I know we've talked about it before. Jay Walker, who was a colleague of ours at a former website, talked often. I know many people have said this, but find where you think Vegas is wrong. Find where you think the totals are off, and you will find a place to get leverage. And tying it back to what Alex and Tom and the owners and proprietors over at Osmo really preach, you get the leverage on the ownership, you're going to be in a good spot. and you're
Right.
going to be able to project out some upside for your lineup.
And to be clear, Vegas is never like wrong because
Right.
you're really just
That's a
getting
great
the
point.
public to bet on it. But where you think the line will sway the public, where they'll be wrong. I know exactly what you're saying. I just want to be clear on that. Like, for example, the Phillies go basically scoreless in 3 straight games in LA against 3 really good pitchers. They have a 4-run total. They're a much better team than we saw them in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to say the whole they're due thing, but you've got a lot of power righties, good righties going up against Eric Lauer, who is average at best, and they're very expensive. So I think you're right on that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot less of them and maybe more Dodger bats than you would think.
You heard it here. Dave said the Phillies are due. So we'll
not what I said. Not what I said, but
cut and print that one because we're going to save that one forever. With that said, though, find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. You find us Monday, Wednesday, Friday here on the DFS Early Bird. You get EMAC and Adam Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. You get the Deeper Dive, which is a live YouTube show with Adam and Dave Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. You get the Deep Dive, which is behind the paywall. Dave writes it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Adam Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So tons of content. You get the projections. You get lineup builder. You get ownership projections behind the paywall. Again, Early Bird is your promo code for that. With that said, wish you the best of luck on this one. Let's have fun. This is a fun slate to sort of maybe try something new. Try out Fantasy Cruncher if you haven't done it before. MME in the 25 cent or the 10 cent, even if that's available on whatever site you're on. Enjoy it. Have some fun. We'll be back with you Tuesday for a full slate of games right here on the DFS Early Bird.